given what the U.S. does to black men and women who step forward to challenge injustice, should we be not surprised by the specter of death that looms over Barack Obama?
Alabama's got me so upset. Tennessee made me lose my rest. And everybody knows about Mississippi. Goddamn! Alabama's got me so upset. Tennessee made me lose my rest. And everybody knows about Mississippi. Goddamn! Can't you see it? Can't you feel it? It's all in the air. I can't stand the pressure much longer. Somebody say a prayer. Alabama's got me so upset. Tennessee made me lose my rest. Everybody knows about Mississippi. Goddamn! Hound dogs on my trail. School children sitting in jail. Black cat cross my path. Think every day is gonna be my last. Lord have mercy on this land of mine. We all gonna get it in due time. I don't belong here, I don't belong there. I've even stopped believing in prayer. Don't tell me, I'll tell you. Me and my people just about do. I've been there, so I know. They keep on saying, go slow. Well, that's just the trouble. Washing the windows, picking the cotton. You're just plain rotten. Do things gradually, bring more tragedy. Why don't you see it? Why don't you feel it? I don't know, I don't know. Just try to do my very best. Stand up, be counted with all the rest. 'Cause everybody knows about Mississippi. Goddamn! Picket lines, school boycotts. They try to say it's a communist plot, but all I want is equality for my sisters, my brothers, my people, and me. You lied to me all these years. You told me to wash and clean my ears and talk real fine, just like a lady. And you'd stop calling me Sister Sadie. But my country is full of lies. We all gonna die and die like flies. 'Cause I don't trust you anymore. They keep on saying, go slow. Well, that's just the trouble. Desegregation, mass participation, unification. Do things gradually. Will bring more tragedy. Why don't you see it? Why don't you feel it? I don't know. I don't know. You don't have to live next to me. Just give me my equality. 'Cause everybody knows about Mississippi. Everybody knows about Michael Jackson. Everybody knows about Margaret Thatcher. Everybody knows about Ronald Reagan. Everybody knows about Martin King. Everybody knows about Jesse Jackson. Everybody knows about Mississippi. Goddamn! Goddamn!
Dr. Marable, the quest for freedom and understanding of freedom has been great among the Afro-Americans. But do you see a change? Can you explain if they understand the term freedom differently from the white perspective?
Absolutely. In the United States, there have been two fundamental ways of defining the word freedom. For most white Americans, freedom means freedom from the government, freedom from the state. They have a libertarian definition of the meaning of freedom that comes close to the concept of liberty. To be freed means that you are not under a regime that controls your decision-making. You can decide to do whatever you want to do. In our Constitution of the United States, there are a series of guarantees, which are amendments to the Constitution. The Second Amendment it states that you have a right to bear arms, that any citizen can own a gun, basically. The First Amendment states that you have freedom of expression, the right of free speech and free expression. You can write what you want as long as you don't libel someone. So that white Americans have thought about freedom in ways that say that I don't have to take responsibility for others as long as I can do whatever I want, as long as I don't libel someone or harm them. For African Americans, there's a very different way of thinking about freedom. It's not freedom from the government. It is freedom. It is the freedom that flows from certain guarantees by the government. Because African Americans arrived here as chattel slaves, and for 250 years of our 400 years on North American soil, we were defined as property. We have a very different relationship to the U.S. government than white Americans do. Our definition is that it's only through the government, through Abraham Lincoln and the federal government, that slavery was abolished. It was only through Lyndon Johnson and the Congress that racial segregation laws were abolished in 1964. It was only through the guarantees of the Voting Rights Act in 1965 that millions of blacks were finally allowed to vote in a country where they were nominally citizens but could not exercise the right of voting. So our whole relationship to rights issues is quite different than white Americans. And so African Americans, I guess in European terms, would be essentially social democrats or democratic socialists regarding their notions of fairness and justice, what the government should provide for people. The vast majority of African Americans favor universal health care and universal education. They would favor governmental support for providing shelter or decent housing for everyone in the country, regardless of race, whereas most white Americans would not be supportive of these things. So that politically, the most advanced and progressive element within the U.S. population tends to be African American. And I say this not because I am an African American. I'm saying this because the historical development of blacks was such that it created among African Americans a recognition that to achieve substantive change for the most disadvantaged populations required the power of the state, the power of government, in beneficial ways, in constructive ways. Whereas for most white Americans, there is no such recognition. They believe in part in the market, in the capitalist market, providing the resources that address people's needs, whereas black Americans have little, if any, faith in the market, because if we left it up to the market, slavery would still exist. So they recognize that the power of the state is the chief guarantor of their rights and their ability to achieve freedom. And so their definition of freedom is quite different.
It started in slave ships, you know.
Slave ships.
There are more records of